told you there's a cabin, nestled deep within the heart of a forest, untouched by time or the outside world. It sits there, hidden away from the eyes of the curious, where the rain never ceases. It doesn't matter whether it's summer or winter, day or night. The rain is always falling, as if it's trying to wash something away, or maybe keep something hidden. But the most terrifying thing about this place is not the rain or the darkness that surrounds it. It's what happens to those who find their way inside and choose to stay. You see, a group of friends, just like any of us, thought they could handle it. They heard the stories, the warnings from locals who wouldn't dare venture too close. They heard about the strange happenings, but brushed them off, thinking it was just an old, tired myth. But one night, they made a decision. They went, and they stayed, just for a night. A single night in the Devil's Cabin. They had no idea that by morning, everything would change. What they didn't know is that once you step inside, you're never really the same. The cabin does something to you. In the heart of an ancient, dense forest, hidden from the eyes of those who might stumble upon it, there stands a cabin. A cabin known to few, but feared by many. Locals whisper about it in hushed tones, their voices lowering when its name is mentioned. It is a place avoided at all costs, a place where even the bravest souls hesitate to venture. They speak of strange occurrences, unsettling noises, and an oppressive sense of being watched. To the locals, it's not just a building, it's a warning, a place no one should visit. And yet, for those who ignore the warnings, the ones foolish enough to cross its threshold, there's only one certainty: you will leave that cabin, or you won't leave at all. The rain never stops. It's as if the storm is part of the cabin itself, pounding endlessly against the roof, as though trying to drown out the cries of those who've entered before. Our story begins with Alex, the young man who thought he knew better. He'd heard the rumors, the tales of strange happenings, but to him, they were just stories. Old stories told by superstitious people who had nothing better to do than scare others with folklore. So when his friends dared him to spend the night in the infamous Devil's Cabin, he didn't hesitate. Just one night. What could possibly go wrong? They'd laugh about it the next morning and share the story like any other prank. He didn't believe in curses. He didn't believe in ghosts. The fear of the unknown was nothing more than a childish fear in his mind. But what Alex didn't know was that fear was not something you could simply ignore here, in this place. Not in the Devil's Cabin. The rain intensifies once again, its rhythmic pounding echoing throughout the cabin. Wind howls through the trees outside, rattling the window panes. Inside, the quiet seems too thick, as though the air itself is waiting for something. As Alex settled into the creaky wooden chair by the fireplace, a sense of unease began to creep over him. The wind howled through the trees, its eerie song rattling the windows with a force that seemed unnatural. He glanced toward the door, half expecting it to be blown open by the gusts outside. Every time Alex closed his eyes for just a moment, he thought he heard something, a scraping sound, faint but persistent. It wasn't the wind, it wasn't the rain. Something was scratching at the door. The noise stopped as abruptly as it had begun. Alex opened his eyes, looking toward the door. Nothing. He tried to shake it off, chalking it up to his imagination, but the unease lingered. The flicker of candlelight dances in the dimly lit room, casting long, distorted shadows against the walls. The rain continues its relentless pounding on the roof, and every now and then, a low groan of the wooden beams can be heard. But as Alex tried to relax, things began to feel off. The air, heavy with the smell of damp wood, felt colder than it should have. The cabin, sealed tightly against the storm, was strangely drafty. A cold breeze swept through the room, passing over Alex's skin, raising goosebumps, despite the windows being shut tight. The candle on the table flickered violently, casting grotesque, stretching shadows that seemed to twist and move on their own. Alex stood up quickly, the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. He walked across the room, trying to convince himself it was just the wind. But no matter how many times he adjusted the candle, the shadows danced as though something unseen was moving behind them. Alex took a deep breath and tried to steady his nerves. He was being ridiculous. The shadows, the cold breeze, it was all just his mind playing tricks on him. But as he walked back to his seat, the feeling wouldn't leave him. The air in the cabin was thick, could almost feel it pressing in on him, as if something unseen was moving in the dark corners of the room, watching him. His heartbeat quickened. He shook his head, trying to dismiss the feeling, but it was there. The cabin felt as though it was holding its breath, waiting. He glanced at the door again, half expecting to see something, or someone standing there. But there was nothing, only the darkness outside. The tension mounts as Alex's unease grows, the uneventful quiet of the cabin now shattered by the growing storm and subtle, unexplainable occurrences. The ambient sound of rain and wind heightens the oppressive atmosphere, signaling that something is about to break the calm and reveal the true nature of the cabin. The sound of rain continues to pelt against the cabin, the wind howling in the distance. Inside, the tension is thick in the air, but the room remains silent. For a moment, Alex began to convince himself that he was overreacting. The rain, the shadows, maybe it was all just a figment of his imagination, an old cabin playing tricks on his mind. He sat back down, letting out a breath as he tried to calm himself. His heart rate slowed, his hands no longer trembling. Everything felt normal again. But just as Alex began to settle, telling himself it was all in his mind, something shattered the silence, a loud, sharp knock on the door. It echoed through the cabin, a single, resounding bang that left his heart racing. No one was supposed to be out there. No one had come up the path. He quickly stood up, his nerves jumping once again. The knock came again, louder this time, more insistent. Alex froze. His breath caught in his throat. He wasn't imagining this. Someone, or something, was at the door. The sound of footsteps approaching the door as Alex steps forward, hands shaking. He opened the door slowly, his heart pounding in his chest. But when he looked outside, there was nothing. The rain slammed against his face, the wind biting at his skin, but there was no one there, just the endless rain. His pulse raced, and a chill ran down his spine. That was the moment everything began to unravel. As Alex stepped back into the cabin, confusion flooded his mind. Was he hearing things? But then he saw it. Something was wrong. The room, the one he had just left, was no longer the same. The walls were covered in dark, cryptic symbols, drawn hastily, almost as if they were written in a hurry. They spiraled around the room, moving in ways that made no sense. The furniture had shifted, just enough to disorient him. An inch here, a foot there. It was enough to make him question what he was seeing. His eyes darted around, scanning the room. The old, dusty chairs were no longer where they had been. The rug, which had been neatly rolled up, was now unrolled, its frayed edges twisted into impossible knots. The fire had gone out, leaving behind only shadows. And the shadows, they seemed to move on them. Alex tried to shake it off, telling himself he was just tired, just imagining things. But as his gaze returned to the door, it hit him. The door he had opened just moments before, it was now locked. There was no way he had locked it. He tugged at the door handle, his hand slipping from the slick metal, but it wouldn't budge. The door, the same one that had opened moments ago, now refused to move. Panic surged through him as he backed away from it, his heart hammering in his chest. The room seemed to close in around him. The sound of rain grows heavier, and the wind howls louder as Alex looks around the room, his eyes wide in terror. The rain outside was no longer a comforting backdrop to the night. It had changed. The rain, the wind, they felt like they were closing in on him. The air grew thick, suffocating. It was no longer just the cabin that felt oppressive. It was as if the entire forest itself had turned its gaze toward him. There was something in the air, something ancient. The smell of damp earth and something foul, something rotten, filled his nostrils, making him gag. Alex's breath is shallow, and he wipes his brow, panic setting in. The sound of low, unsettling whispers starts to creep in, just beneath the rain. Something was in the cabin with him now. And it wasn't the wind, it wasn't the storm, he wasn't alone. The cabin is shrouded in an eerie quiet, broken only by the relentless beat of the rain. The air is thick with dread, and the sound of distant thunder rolls in the background. As Alex's heart raced, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, something watching him, waiting. Every time he turned around, his eyes caught a flicker in the corner of his vision. A movement, just a shadow, disappearing as quickly as it appeared. He spun toward it, his chest tight with fear, but each time there was nothing, no one, just the empty, dimly lit room. The rain intensifies and the wind howls louder, whistling through the cracks of the cabin. Alex's breathing is shallow, quick. His heartbeat thudded in his ears, each pulse louder than the last. He clenched his fists, trying to steady himself, but the feeling wouldn't leave him. Something was there, watching, waiting. The sound was unmistakable, the heavy, dragging footsteps on the wooden floor. They were slow, deliberate, like someone walking toward him. Alex's head snapped toward the sound, his eyes wide with terror. But when he looked, there was nothing. The room was still, empty. The room is now dark, lit only by the dim flicker of a single candle. Alex's breath is ragged as he backs into a corner, unable to shake the overwhelming sense that he's being surrounded. His pulse hammered in his chest, the terror swelling inside him. And then, as if the world itself had paused, Alex heard it. Something breathing. Slow, deep. A sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. His body froze, every muscle tensing. He spun around, his eyes searching the shadows. And then he saw it. The dark silhouette of something standing just behind him in the doorway. Its figure was tall, its shape shadowed by the low light. It didn't move. It didn't speak. But the air, the very space around him, felt colder, heavier. The smell of decay and rot filled the room, thick and nauseating. The stench seemed to cling to him, suffocating him with its rancid presence. Alex's body locked in place, his mind screaming to run, to fight, but his legs wouldn't obey. He stood frozen, his body trembling uncontrollably. The figure took a step forward. It was closer now, closer than anything should be. The figure moves, a slight shift in the air, the unmistakable sound of it drawing nearer. He tried to move. He couldn't. His feet were rooted to the floor as though the cabin itself had claimed him. The figure took another step, and then another. The sound of rain outside intensifies, the wind howling fiercely. Inside, the atmosphere is heavy, suffocating, with every creak of the cabin amplifying the growing tension. The figure is close now, its presence almost suffocating. Alex's eyes are wide, his body frozen in place. As Alex stood there, trapped, unable to move, the figure loomed closer. The stench of decay filled the room, the air growing colder with every breath he took. It was as if the very walls of the cabin were closing in on him, trapping him in a nightmare with no escape. His pulse raced, the beat of his heart echoing in his ears, louder than the howling wind outside. What would you do if you were trapped in that cabin with no way out, surrounded by an evil that refuses to let go? What if there was nowhere to run, nowhere to hide? Did Alex escape, or was he consumed by the devil's cabin, just another soul lost to its curse? The storm rages outside, but it's nothing compared to the storm brewing inside the cabin. The darkness calls, and it doesn't let go. What do you think happened to Alex? Was he able to escape the horrors of the devil's cabin, or did he fall victim to whatever evil lurks within those walls? Have you ever had an encounter with something supernatural, something that made you question what you thought you knew about the world? Share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your stories, your experiences. What would you have done if you were in Alex's shoes? And don't forget, if you want to hear more terrifying tales and explore the darkest corners of the supernatural, hit that like button, share with your friends, and subscribe. You wouldn't want to miss what's coming next. The rain, now a constant, rhythmic roar outside, intensifies as Alex slowly moves through the cabin. The tension is palpable, every small sound amplifying in the stillness of the room. As Alex moved through the cabin, the floorboards groaned under his weight, the sound sharp and unnatural, echoing through the empty space. With each step, it felt as though the house itself was reacting to him, as if it could feel his every movement, his every breath. The air around him grew thick, heavy with the dampness of the storm. The smell of mildew and wet wood filled his nostrils, thick and choking. It was a stench that seemed to seep into his skin, clinging to him, making his throat tighten. It was as if the cabin itself had been abandoned for decades, holding on to every drop of moisture that fell from the sky, never letting go. The rain outside grew louder, like the growl of a beast, thrashing against the windows, angry and relentless. It wasn't just the sound of rain anymore. It felt alive. It pulsed with a rhythm that matched the pounding of Alex's heart, as if the storm were somehow tied to his every move, every thought. Suddenly, there was a cold gust of wind that slipped through the cracks in the walls, making the hairs on the back of Alex's neck stand on end. It wasn't just a breeze, it was a presence. A chill that seemed to crawl over his skin, seeping deep into his bones. The air in the room felt too thick, like it was suffocating, pressing in from every direction. As Alex turned his head, his eyes darting from shadow to shadow, the room felt smaller. The shadows weren't just dark corners. They seemed to stretch, to grow with every passing second. The cabin was no longer just a building. It had become something else, something that felt alive. The walls closed in around him, and with every step he took, the silence felt heavier. Then he heard it again, the scratching. At first, faint, just a whisper of sound against the door. But now it was clearer, louder. A deliberate, slow drag like claws scraping against wood, as if something, or someone, was trying to get in, trying to break through. The wind shrieked outside, and the rain pummeled the cabin like the pounding of fists on a door, demanding entry. Every gust of wind seemed to carry with it a whisper, a voice barely audible. It was there, just on the edge of hearing, like 1,000 voices all speaking at once, too far to understand, but close enough to send a wave of dread down his spine. The candlelight flickered violently, casting long, grotesque shadows on the walls, shadows that seemed to move, stretch, and twist in unnatural ways. Every time Alex blinked, they changed, becoming more distorted, more alien. The air felt thick, as if something invisible was watching him, drawing closer. You've just heard the story of Alex, a young man who thought he could handle the unknown, who thought a single night in the Devil's Cabin would be just another thrill. But what if there's more to these stories? What if the truth behind these haunted places is darker than we dare to imagine? Places that once you step into, you leave only as a shadow of who you were. What if Alex's fate wasn't just an isolated incident, but the first of many, tales waiting to be uncovered? Are there other places like this? Places where the walls hold memories of those who disappeared, never to return? Is there something more to the whispers in the night? Something we'll never truly understand until we're caught in its grip? If you want more true horror stories like this one, if you want to know what's lurking behind the next shadow, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notifications so you'll never miss another terrifying tale. We've only scratched the surface. And next time, we explore a chilling story that'll make you think twice before setting foot in the woods again.